Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome once again to IPSI's weekly forum on Africa, Israel, and Black America. I'm your host, Joshua Washington, the executive director of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. We are live. We're here everywhere, so let your friends, neighbors know. Ping them, send them in here. That theme song you heard once again is The First 7 Miles by jazz composer and performer and pianist Randy Sandoli. You can find his music on streaming platforms everywhere. His album is entitled Simcha, and Simcha, which means joy, Simcha, and you can find it all streaming platforms if you like that theme music. Just a couple of announcements before we get started. First of all, as we say every month, you can become a legacy builder with the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. All you have to do is go to our website, ibsi.org, and give. Click on the donate button and set up a monthly amount. I've been challenging those who've been watching this, if you've been enjoying our live sessions, to give a monthly amount of at least $18 a month. So please, that challenge still stands. We have our end of the year campaign. We're still pushing. Our goal is $36,000. If you can help us reach that goal before this calendar year is over, that would be incredible. And it would also continue to help us and strengthen us to do the work that we do in Black, Jewish, Africa, Israel relations. We have a lot of events coming up, especially in 2024, different parts of the U.S., and even parts of Canada and abroad. So there's a lot of important work to be done. As a matter of fact, IPSI co-hosted an event last week in New York with the Sharaka Group, and our friend Dan Pfefferman heads that group. He had a panel of Arab and Muslim people from different Arab countries. And they shared about their love and support for Israel, and also just about their upbringing and how they were heavily influenced by the propaganda around them, but how they were able to come out of it. It was very, very inspiring, very powerful. But we're going to do more events, especially centered around Israel and Africa and what that means, and all that stuff. So please stay tuned. But your donations help us to continue to do that. All right, so a couple other things. Tomorrow is the IPSI Pastors event. Our CEO and founder is hosting an event called Africa and Black America's Prophetic Call to Zion. You don't want to miss it. Go to our website so you can register for it. You want to check it out, see what our CEO has to say tomorrow. It's going to be really great. Also, on the 12th of January, our CEO and myself, we will be at the Wilshire Boulevard Temple in Los Angeles for an amazing event just before Shabbat. There'll be some music, there'll be some speaking, and then even as we're bringing in the Shabbat, there will also be music as well. I'll be sharing some of my own music, but then I'll also be playing with some of the musicians that are there as well. It is going to be really beautiful. So if you're in the LA area on January 12th, come out and see us. It's going to be we're going to have a great time. It's going to be amazing. All right, let's get into this because today, as those of you who see on Instagram the titles there, you'll see that joining me a little bit later on, I'll have Rav Mordechai with us. For those, Rav Mordechai Yosef ben Avraham, it's a friend of ours, friend of IPSI's. He does great work himself. He's in Israel now, and there's an article that we had shared out from him that he had penned in the National Post called BLM Has It Backwards. Hamas is the one enslaving Palestinians. Powerful article. We're going to talk more about that with him and have him unpack that. So that's my kids. Good night, you guys. You guys have a good night. Bye-bye. Sorry about that, guys. It is 8:00 and around now. The kids go to bed, so that's what happens usually now. But yes, so we'll have him in just a little bit. But I'm going to touch on a couple of different issues first. First of all, I know this has been going around quite a bit, and not only has it gone around quite a bit, but it's even caught mainstream attention because of how ridiculous it was. So it was a little bit refreshing, I think, for me to see that it wasn't just pro-Israel accounts and Zionist accounts calling this out, but I saw just people in general, comedians taking advantage of it and really calling out the absurdity. But just a few days ago, there was a hearing. You had two university presidents. One was a president of Harvard, and one was a president of the University of Pennsylvania. The president of Harvard, Claudine Gay, and the president of UPenn, which was Liz McGill. And they were questioned on a few different things. We're going to start with the video first. Maria, if you have it, go ahead and start it now. And then we'll go from there.
Ms. McGill, at Penn, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
If the speech turns into conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
I am asking specifically calling for the genocide of Jews. Does that constitute bullying or harassment?
If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment.
So the answer is yes.
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
It's a context-dependent decision. That's your testimony today. Calling for the genocide of Jews is depending upon the context. That is not bullying or harassment. This is the easiest question to answer yes, Ms. McGill. So is your testimony that you will not answer yes?
If it if the
yes
speech
or
becomes
no?
if the speech becomes conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
Conduct meaning committing the act of genocide? The speech is not harassment? This is unacceptable, Ms. McGill. I'm going to give you one more opportunity for the world to see your answer. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct when it comes to bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be harassment.
The answer is yes. And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
What's the context?
Targeted as an individual, at an individual.
It's
severe,
targeted at
pervasive.
Jewish students, Jewish individuals. Do you understand your testimony is dehumanizing them? Do you understand that dehumanization is part of anti-Semitism? I will ask you one more time. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric. When
And is it anti-Semitic rhetoric?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric, when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying, harassment, intimidation, that is actionable conduct, and we do take action.
So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign. These are unacceptable answers across the board.
So a lot of you have already seen this video by now, and there's a couple of things here. One, I just saw maybe a 1 minute, 1.5 minute clip of Saturday Night Live doing it, and even when they were poking fun of it, they were still kind of poking fun also at the lady who was questioning them. Still like not really completely highlighting the absurdity of it, but still the fact that they were able to. The fact that they at least, highlighted what was happening, because you can see it's absurd, right? It's a very direct question. And according to both of these university presidents, calling for the genocide of Jews does not, it can violate their code of conduct depending on the context, right? That's what they kept saying. Now, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pushing for them to resign, especially Claudine Gay. And there is, understandably so, right? There's a lot of happiness and joy around that, because obviously what you're seeing here, it really is. It's a very academic way of dehumanizing someone, because in no other arena, no other place is calling, in no other group of people, there wouldn't be an acceptance of calling for anyone else's genocide, right? If there were students marching down the streets calling for the genocide of Black Americans, everyone would be up in arms. If there were people marching through the quads of Howard University calling for the genocide of Asian Americans, I mean, we saw that when just a couple years ago, right? Stand against Asian hate, stop Asian hate. Like, there was no question at all whatsoever about that being wrong. You're calling for the killing of somebody, which that's not protected speech. Actually calling for the death of somebody else, you can't do that. You can't say kill all the fill in the blank. Like, not in a public setting like that, because you're actually calling people to action, right? To murder. So this attitude right now that the presidents are exuding is something that's replete in the university space. There's a tweet that our CEO shared from someone who basically said, "Okay, that's great. If you guys are celebrating it, that's cool. The problem is that it's a symptom of a much deeper issue in the university space in general, right? This isn't just these two individuals. As a matter of fact, their replacements will probably be much worse than them. That's usually how this thing goes, right? It's we can attack the person all we want, and this is where we sometimes lose our way, is that we go after the individual who's saying these things. We make entire campaigns around that individual or these two individuals. Will for the next 2 weeks, they'll be the butt of the jokes and memes and all that stuff. We'll even write to the university and call them to fire them. The problem is they're a part of a system, and all that system is going to do is put someone else in their place that will continue to carry out this absurdity. And someone said that's good with absolutely disgusting and shameful and harmful to even women in leadership. This was not a laughing matter at all. It should never have been allowed to do, it degrades women in politics. But see, that's the issue, is that it degrades everything. And it's not just, we have to look at this deeper than a couple of individuals. We have to look at this as this is actually the system that produces these people, this ideology. This ideology, again, and without sounding like a broken record, this ideology that applies this same logic to white people, where many of us, some of us who even are fighting against this, have accepted, right? Some of us have accepted this. It's okay for, I mean, there are Black people, there are other people, Mexican people, people on Twitter and stuff who were tweeting stuff like, I remember I was talking about this before, culturally, right? On Twitter, someone was tweeting, when you see a group of white people like enjoying themselves, having a cookout, don't you just feel angry? And there was like a ton of comments like, oh yeah, girl, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was like, what? Excuse me? But the thing is, that has become more culturally acceptable. And some of us, even in this Israel advocacy space, who are fighting against and are calling out what just happened in that hearing with Claudine Gay and Kat McGill, some of us have accepted that part of the ideology and are trying to divorce Jews from white people, but still keep that system. The problem is we really have to be on one accord and coming against the system. It's the system. So that's a part of it, right? And the thing about this is, not only if they both step down today, not only will they be replaced with someone tomorrow, the schools will continue to be the same, right? This is Barry Weiss tweeted, I just saw today. She said, "Are you serious about getting rid of this destructive ideology that's replete on college campuses? Okay, one question then: do you oppose DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion? If your answer is no, then you're not serious." And she still got a lot of pushback. And that's what I'm saying, is that we can't even come together on the fact that DEI actually is very destructive. Because what it does is it just puts people up there based on their skin color. We need some Black faces. We need some women. Okay, just put a woman in there, put a Black person in there. And what tends to happen is you get people who are incompetent. So then what happens with what you see with President Claudine Gay? Her response was unacceptable and not very comprehensive. And so then what you have is, on the one hand, you have the racists who say, see, black people can't do this. You have the sexists who say, see, women can't do this. And then you just have people who think that she represents a lot of, there are plenty of black people. There are plenty of black women who are very much qualified to be in her position. But DEI doesn't say, let's just make sure everyone has the same access, right? The same opportunity. No, DEI says there has to be the same outcome for everyone. That is never a good thing. Claudine Gay was a part of the group of people who were responsible for trying to get Roland Fryer. If you don't know who Roland Fryer is, look him up. We've written about him a few times now, out of the university because of his reporting on what's happening in his community. He's an economist, he's a numbers guy, and he he was one of the few black educators who was in the university space who actually came from the hood, like from the projects. And he was like, this is my background, and I'm actually going by the numbers. There are plenty of, but see what DEI does, it doesn't say let's interview or let's make sure we get the best of the best. It's let's get someone black, right? Let's make sure we have a female in there. Oh, great, we have a black female. Congratulations. That alone really shouldn't be cause for celebration. That's just the person. So until we can come together on that, until we can come together on the fact that the whole ideology is destructive, it's not good for black people, white people, Jewish people, it's not good for anyone. Until we can come together on that, we're going to continue to cut off the tree at its branches. We're not really going to get to the root of the issue. So yes, this hearing is reprehensible. Now imagine this times 500 and happening across college campuses all across the country, because that's what's happening right now. There were college professors. There was one at Cornell just a day or two after October 7th who said that when he saw what Hamas did on October 7th, it was exciting and exhilarating to see. This is a college professor. These people are not in a vacuum. They are not. These two presidents were not just some bad people in an otherwise pretty good system. This is the system. And so what they were espousing is what they teach to their students, is what happens all across the country. We have to be real about the fact that we're very much compromised. So I want to move on here because we just have a few minutes before I invite Rav Mordechai here. The next thing is with the few minutes I have left, I want to just turn your attention to this. We've been partners for a while with a dear friend of ours, Charles Jacobs, who is a modern day abolitionist. He has an organization called iAbolish, iAbolish.org. And this man has been fighting for the freedom and freeing slaves in the different parts of Africa, Mauritania and Libya and Sudan for decades now. He's received awards. He even received an award directly from Coretta Scott King before she passed. This man's a great man. There's a video, an article was just released in Tablet Magazine, and also this video is attached. We're going to show you this video now where our CEO talks about what's happening and also slavery and attaches that to iAbolish. So you guys enjoy this video.
For decades, Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan has falsely claimed that Jewish people played a disproportionately major role in the slave trade in America and the West Indies. This rhetoric has been cited or repeated for so long that some segments of the black community and of American society in general accept it as true. Eminent scholars such as Henry Louis Gates of Harvard and David Breon Davis of Yale have systematically refuted the false claims of Jewish dominance over the slave trade. In actual fact, scholars say that Jews only made up about 0.01% of major slaveholders in the American South before the Civil War. Yet, Louis Farrakhan and groups like the Radical Hebrew Israelites persist in spreading this lie. But there is a slave trade of millions of Africans happening right now. Not only has Louis Farrakhan not called attention to it, he has repeatedly covered it up or sought to deny it because it conflicts with his religious and political agendas. Indeed, it embarrasses him. The New York Times reported that when he was confronted at a press conference about reports of Arabs and Muslims enslaving blacks in Sudan, He denied it was true and called the reports a Jewish plot. He challenged reporters to prove it.
If slavery exists, why don't you go as a member of the press and you look inside of the Sudan? And if you find it, then you come back and tell the American people what you have found.
Unfortunately for Farrakhan, the Baltimore Sun took him up on his challenge. It sent reporters to Sudan who bought 2 slave boys freedom. It openly called him out for his deception. Today in Sudan, there could be as many as 35,000 still in bondage to Arab masters nearly 20 years after the end of a racist war which killed 2.5 million African Sudanese. Perhaps 500,000 or more Africans continue to serve as slaves to Arab and Berber masters in Mauritania. CNN has video of Libyans holding slave auctions where men were sold for $400 apiece. In Algeria, Africans seeking a passageway to Europe are being caught, enslaved, and tortured. In Nigeria, the Muslim soldiers of Boko Haram enslave Christians, mostly teenage girls. There's also a genocide of Christians and Igbo in Nigeria, over 43,000 killed in the last 12 years. And in the Arab Gulf states, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of destitute African women are lured by false promises of jobs and trafficked into domestic and sexual slavery. The Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel has partnered with the American Anti-Slavery Group to help start putting pressure on the U.S. Congress and State Department to take a strong international stance against these atrocities. It is long past time for the abolition of slavery in the modern world. To learn how you can help, please visit iAbolish.org.
That story about Louis Farrakhan calling out the reporter. This is how close our friend Charles Jacobs is to this issue. He was there. He was one of the reporters that Farrakhan was yelling at. He was a part of the press delegation that actually went to Sudan and came back and proved. And he said that when they came back and they had all the evidence, all the proof, Farrakhan stopped responding to them. He hasn't talked to them since. And, you know, again, same point is about what's happening in universities. Not to make this all about Louis Farrakhan, right? He's a big voice, so we're EPSI's pushing back and all those things. But the bigger issue is that there is this huge system of slavery that's being largely ignored. And so, again, iAbolish.org. You can go there and help continue that. Now, I'm about to bring Rav on. Someone just asked, why do they ignore this? Well, the video said it in short. It conflicts with the Nation of Islam's political agenda, right? The Islam is what they subscribe to, and this slavery is happening at the hands of Islam. And there's some other things to that too, which we've talked about before, and I've even had Charles Jacobs on our podcast a few years ago, and I may have him back again soon, actually, to give some updates. But Farrakhan is also friends with some of these people who own slaves in these African countries. So there's a lot of conflict of interest. Farrakhan is not only not good for the Jewish people, he hasn't been good for a lot of things. But we'll get into that at a different time. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and invite our friend Rav Mordechai Yosef ben Avraham onto the stage. There he is. Rav Mordechai, it's good to see you, sir. How are you?
Excellent. How's everything by you?
Everything is good. Everything is good. Are you joining us from where are you now? You in Israel now?
I'm in Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem. Awesome. Yes, sir. Well, thank you for taking the time. I know it's late over there. It's very late there now. But thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. So, Rav, you just published an article. It was about 10 days ago now. That I want you to unpack for us a little bit more. Called "BLM Has It Backwards. Hamas is the one enslaving Palestinians," says Black Rabbi, and you actually go right into it. I mean, kind of right for the jugular, starting with what happened with BLM Chicago after October 7th and how they responded, and how that's connected to the Black Liberation Movement. Can you unpack that just a little bit? What about BLM subscribes to Black liberation theology? Like how do they get that?
I think, I think maybe just because of the word black, maybe, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I just think like that word in itself is like, kind of like defines their
Mm.
outlook. The goal of that article, it was an interview. Number one, I didn't write it myself. It was an interview.
Oh, okay, okay.
And it was basically like the idea around the conversation was to really kind of like show like the discrepancy between what's going on here in the Middle East versus
Mm.
what's being portrayed in U.S. media. And when you look at this whole BLM thing with their involvement with, or not just BLM, just just the protest in general, you can see a lot of the same energy that was exerted through George Floyd and Travion Martin, and it just seems like that now. This is like it's like now like there's a movement that just wants to inflict havoc on America. So any theme that they could attach themselves to, they're
Mm.
going to utilize it to create chaos and separation and violence, these types of
Right.
things. So with BLM specifically, they're utilizing, a term that our ancestors used for liberation, right? Using
Mm.
that term to say like, hey, we want to be included in democracy. We want to be included into the equality. We want to see more justice. Black Lives
Mm.
Matter. And
Mm.
they took that term and now they turned it into a weaponized mechanism to join, socialists and people who want to take down America.
Wow. And so and you talk about that, and also that how, well, let me ask you this then. How did they gain such a foothold then, in your view then, as a Black Jew? And I think mainly watching this from Israel, but also here as well, like being back and forth. How were they able to gain such a foothold in your view?
I think it was a process. My mom, who's a professor, she told me years ago when she was in high school. I think she's probably like your father's age, around that
Mm.
that class. And she said
Mhm.
when she was in high school in Los Angeles,
Mm.
Crenshaw High School, she said that there were people passing out socialist, communist pamphlets and small
Wow.
books when she was on
Wow.
campus, and she was told, like by Angela Davis and these types of people, that if socialism existed in America, racism wouldn't exist. The inequalities that the Black
Mm.
community is experiencing is only a byproduct of capitalism and these types of things.
Right.
And so she
Right.
said a lot of these people, they were like hippies, looking for
Yeah.
change and this in the late 70s type of a thing. And so they were urged to, like people in her generation that were like, intellectuals were urged to get involved in the system and to make
Right.
changes within. So I think you could chase it back for decades and decades
Yeah.
before Black Lives Matters as an institution was ever created,
Right.
that this socialist theme got into our community.
That's an interesting point, and it's something that we've talked about too. Is that, you know, Black Lives Matter is just the new. That's just the new phrase now, right? But that mindset is not a new thing, um, and it's, that mindset has taken different shapes even back into the '60s, like you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. Um, and then Rob, so with that now, so let's just go back for a second to October 7th. First of all, so two questions for you. Um, One, how is your family, like, just how have you guys been doing since then to now? And then two, what we're talking about now, have you seen that, has that gotten worse, or has it dissipated, this kind of, this voice coming out of, whether you call it the Black Liberation Theology, BLM, that kind of crowd, how has that been for you?
Yeah, so in terms of October 7th, it was a crazy time because, it was number one, it was on Shabbat. And then
Yeah.
another aspect is that it was doing Simchat Torah, which
Yep.
is Simcha means to, basically happiness, joy, celebration. And we're celebrating the Torah. We went through a whole period of long holidays from Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. So it was like a time of like a culmination
Yeah.
of this amazing time. And so I just remember that morning, I usually wake up early and I'm learning, getting prepared for Shabbat and such of
Mhm.
things. And I just hear these sirens going off. and the sirens, I usually, I'm used to associating the sirens with the Israel's Independence Day or Yom Ha'atzmaut, or these different
Right.
times where you hear sirens and things like this.
Right.
So we just heard it, and I didn't, I was just like, wait, what's going on? Because I mean, I
Yeah.
haven't
Yeah.
heard sirens, and so long story short, next thing you hear is boom, 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 and you just hear these
Mm,
loud explosions and everything
right.
shaking. You're just kind of like, what is going on? Like, is that an explosion? This, you can't even
Mm,
fathom that it's missiles. You know what I mean?
right.
Like it's
Right.
like, even though I mean, you put two and two together, and the thing is, I live in a high like a high rise like apartment complex, and so
Mm,
I'm looking down on the street, and I live right by the central bus station, like
wow.
maybe one stop away. So it's a lot of traffic all the time,
Yeah.
and I look outside, and I just see the Israelis just walking to shul synagogue like nothing's happening. So I
Wow.
just
Oh,
assumed
wow.
that it wasn't that big of a deal, because the
Right.
people in
Right.
Israel, they stopped for a second, they didn't see anything, kept going. It's the resilient
Wow.
nature. And it wasn't
Yeah.
until later that day, me and my wife went to, because we had all our food prepared at the house, we do everything. It
Right.
wasn't until later that day we went to shul, and people are like, and I'm like, hey, what was up with that whole thing this morning with the thing you saw? It's terrible. People are dead, hundreds of people. And I'm like, what? It's like in the South, because a lot of the guys
Wow.
there were IDF soldiers that they were getting calls that morning.
Right. Right.
So it's been that, and then
Wow.
that carried on for like another probably several days, like intense. Like we're running to the bomb shelter every 20 minutes. And in Jerusalem, it's kind of died down a little bit. The first
Mm,
week was kind of intense, but Tel Aviv and other places more in the center of Israel, they're still running in bomb shelters like every day. You know what I mean?
mm,
So different regions have different experiences with the war, but we had
mm.
that. But yeah, we're surviving. We're getting a lot of support, these types of things. And
Yeah.
in terms of the second question with BLM,
Yeah.
I think there's two things happening. I think it's happening that it is growing. The sentiment is growing for sure.
Mm, mm.
Um, the sentiment is growing for sure. But I think as things grow, it creates an environment for multiple opinions to be developed, right?
Mm,
So
mhm,
if
mhm.
and so if everyone, people who are being engaged in this that are African American, you know, there was like the excuse me, you
Bless
had the people who like the pioneers
you. Mm,
who were like in it and they want to destroy anything the movement's a part of. And you have people who are hearing about it. And you could call those like early adapters. And then
mm,
they're going to hear about that and they're going to say, hey, well, is it really the way that they're saying it? And then I
mm.
think that is going to create more of a dialogue for a contrast of opinions as we continue to go on.
Right. Right. That's interesting. And I want to go into this now because you talked about this in your interview, and that is what is it that is causing these same social justice warriors to not either I don't know if it's because they don't know or they to not speak out about the actual suffering in Gaza. And you touched on that in the interview. Like how Hamas is actually oppressing its own people. How there's no money there unless you want to work for Hamas. If you don't work for Hamas, then you're in poverty. You don't know where your next meal is coming from. All that stuff. What causes these people to not even in the name of social justice? And if you're already in the Middle East, you're meddling in these affairs already. Why not also call attention to what's going on in Gaza? Why do you think they don't do that?
Well, I think historically, a lot of people from the left side have shown dehumanization and racism in their advocacy in general.
Mm, mm,
Meaning that when you even look at how the left deals with African American issues, right?
mm,
There could be
mm,
like huge protests for George Floyd and Travion Martin and Eric Gardner, and they're tearing down the place, they're burning it up, this, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And that fits the left's agenda, right? But then
mm.
after all that's over with, they go back to their neighborhoods, they continue on with their lives in the same conditions that those black people were in continues to stay the same,
Right.
right?
Right.
So
Mm,
the idea is never about change. The idea is about how can we utilize this to advance our social position and our power in the social structure, right?
Right.
So the
Right.
same thing over here with Hamas, right? With what we see here in the south of Israel, in Gaza, you see a militant group that, I mean, like, this is I was just talking about this earlier today with the
Yeah.
African American friend of mine who's also Jewish and lived in Israel but is back in the States, and I said to him, I said, you know what, the American population cannot conceive of the idea of someone declaring war on somebody, then utilizing over 2 million people to
Right.
be basically cannon fodder, right? Like basically like people who are there, like say, hey,
Right.
imagine if you had gang members. Imagine this. Imagine you had gang members.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of doing drive-by shootings, they walked into houses holding 3 babies, and they were shooting at their enemies. And then
Right.
as their enemies want to respond, they're looking at this person holding 3 babies,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so the American population cannot understand that there's people who are on this level of darkness
Yeah.
that they would literally say, hey, we're going to go and shoot rockets. We're going to go and shoot people. And then we're going to do all this mayhem. And then we're going to run back to our place, go underground. And so when the people that we're opposing come and defend themselves,
Right.
then they're going to come after us in specific locations, but we're not going to be anywhere to be found. Only you guys are.
Right.
And then once you guys are killed, we're going to go to the international community, utilize your casualty number as a mechanism to raise more money for our agenda. They can't imagine
Right.
that level of dark thinking.
Yeah.
Can't.
And it's interesting because even in the name of Black liberation, like Black liberation theology, that was never a tactic, even within the most radical wing of the civil rights movement. It was never a tactic to let's just try to even in the more violent senses, let's just kill these white people that are walking down the street, or let's just bomb this house, or let's use our own people, like you said, as shields or as fodder, so that we can gain more sympathy. Like, it would have never even entered into, think of the most radical Black Panther, to put my own child in harm's way for media purposes. Like, that's not even a tactic. Those things don't even line up. And I think the deeper issue is one, you have people who will never believe that could even happen, like you said, and then two, this whole ideology that any kind of what they call resistance, is justified. So any action that's taken now by the Palestinians, by Hamas, it's all justified because it's all for some sort of greater good. So even actions like harming our own people, killing our own children, that's justified, right? That's crazy.
Well,
Go ahead.
on that point, I was just going to say, like, the thing is, and this is the problem with the PLO, because it's not just Hamas. Israel. A lot of people are trying to criticize our engagement in the West Bank, right? And they're saying like, oh, but it's not Gaza. Why are you guys being this way? It's like, no, because Hamas is an ideology, and the problem that most people have when they're analyzing this conflict, they're looking at it, one, from a historical context, meaning Israel establishing itself in 1948 and the responses and here and all these types of things.
Right.
But the reality is that this isn't a war against Hamas. This is a war in a region that Hamas just happens to be the frontline soldiers, and their tactic as frontline soldiers is using civilian casualties as their way of engagement. Because we're facing Hezbollah, you have Iran, which has a series of proxies. American bases in Syria and in Iraq have been attacked like over close to 50 times, throughout it. You have the people in Yemen who are firing rockets, the Houthis or whatever they're called. You have all these different people in this region that are only in business because they're able to trap and control the narrative of the people of those places, the Muslim people of those places, right? And so this war that you see against Gaza, they knew there was going to be a response. They knew there was going to be a heavy response, and they wanted that response to happen because they wanted to throw their civilian casualties. They're hoping to have 100,000 by now. They're disappointed, but they only got 10,000, and I think those numbers even fabricated. But the point is saying that they are utilizing this in a much broader context. And so the education that these populations has to be understood, that the young kids in Gaza, in the West Bank, are going to schools that tell them that the highest thing they can be is a martyr. The highest thing they can do is wage jihad. If they're learning mathematics, it's mathematics for the sake of jihad. If they learn any type of science, it's a science to allow them to understand how to enact jihad or jihad, however way you want to say it. The point is just saying that's what they're taught. So you're talking about an entire population that's been indoctrinated since they've been children. I think they said most of 60% of the population in Gaza was born in Gaza. You know what I'm saying? They never knew anything different. So you're talking about a whole population of young people that become teenagers that have been indoctrinated since they were children, since they were babies, to hate Jews, to hate America, to attack anybody who's in association with them. They were even killing Muslims down in the South, who were bus drivers driving, people to the festivals, people who were working, in Sirot, these different places. So the whole issue is problematic for Israel. And I'll say this: the dynamic that Israel has to deal with having neighbors that are plotting their death and their killing and their murder of their children every day, and Israel's supposed to accept that. This is the same type of subordination that Black people in America had to deal with as it relates to wanting equality, as it related to wanting justice in certain areas, and wanting to be able to live in an environment where they felt safe. We were supposed to accept white supremacy, accept being a second-class citizen. We're supposed to accept whatever abuses that are going on because, hey, we're not on the plantation anymore. We're not slaves anymore. And this is exactly how they're treating the Jews in Israel. Oh, well, you're not in Europe anymore. You're not in the Middle East anymore. You have your own country. But if you have your own country, you're going to be subordinate to our rules, even if it means you're going to put yourself in environments that are absolutely dangerous for your well-being and your future.
Absolutely. No, it's good. It's good. Rob, I want you to just for a few minutes, if you can share with us. I know you're working. Excuse me. You're working on some stuff on your own. You have a book. You have some other work you're doing. So can you just share with us what it is you're doing so we can know how to follow you and get your work?
Yeah. So I have a book out. It's on Amazon right now. It's called Mind of the Black Jew. And basically, book is, and in fact, a lot of the work that you guys do, which organization, and I want to thank you guys. I want to thank ISPI for allowing me to, share this platform with you guys. And you guys have always been extremely kind to me, your father, your mother, the whole environment, the community that you guys have. And I just want to thank you guys for just being supportive of all the Black Jews in Israel and around the world. And your work is also advocating for us, so the name of the book is Mind of the Black Jew. And basically I wrote the book to basically put some focus. You have a famous, a funny interview with the guy named the Baby from Cash Money, right? I don't know if you ever remember this interview. So there's this problem with this radio show, The Breakfast Club. Yeah. And he goes in there and he's like, put some respect on my name. Yeah, right? He says that. So I feel like, African Americans, we've been so dynamic throughout history, right? Mm-hmm. Even when we think about this conflict, and I know we're veering into another area, but even the conflict itself, like we talked about in that interview, Black people have been through more oppression than Palestinians. Okay, when you look at our whole story, people don't want to realize it, but there were bombs dropped on Black people in America. You know what I mean? There were airstrikes against us. Right? There were people going in our communities, shooting, mowing us down, burning down people inside of churches. You know what I'm saying? People being accused. So I was saying to a friend, I was like, you know what? There was a time where Black people, if I looked at a woman who was white the wrong way, by the time I got back home, there could be a lynching mob there, right? Yep. So the point is saying Palestinians don't have to deal with that. Israel wants Palestinians to want to make money, to be successful, to become educated, to be Israeli society. This is what the Israelis want. They want a successful community. So anyways, with that being said, the book Mind of the Black Jew is putting some respect on our intellect, right? So whether you have guys that were in different faith systems than me, that were African American, that were also fighting for progression, these types of things. It's the same thing. So I said, mind of the Black Jew, because the Black intellect in Judaism should be looked at, not just our story and how unique we are and how different. It's like, no, we have powerful minds, and we have for hundreds of years in America. And this is our mind applied to Judaism. So that book is available, and it's there for everybody. It's not for everybody, but it's giving a perspective of Torah and learning, yeshiva Torah and learning, from the perspective of an African American who put himself into it.
I love that because so for two things. It's funny, in the beginning of the segment we were talking about DEI, and we talked about those university professors, and what I like about your perspective and what you're talking about in the book is that it's not, like you said, it's not just, we're Black, so therefore read this book. It's there's a whole experience that comes with this. There's a whole history that comes with the fact that we are of African descent, and the things that we went through because of that. You need to hear this, right? You need to hear this point of view. And that itself, I think, is powerful. And will actually moves things forward. I think that actually opens up real dialogue. So you guys, if you haven't heard of it, Mind of the Black Jew, the oldest new way of thinking. It's on Amazon. This is Rav Mordechai. Rav, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
It's like what, 3 in the morning, but
no. It's 3:48. But you know what? During this time of Hanukkah, for some reason I've been blessed to wake up really early. The sages teach, and this is for everybody.
Yeah.
If you study your scripture after midnight, if you study the Torah after midnight, there's a super powerful spiritual energy available to that person. That's only available after midnight, after Chatzot. So it just, anybody during this time of Hanukkah, when they connect to the energy of miracles, wake up early and study some Torah, and you plug right in. You could study the book of Yehoshua.
Yeah, just read right. My namesake. That'd be I'm gonna keep that in my heart. I appreciate that. I might do that this morning, actually. That's awesome. Thank you so much, sir. Well, Rob, thank you so much. You have a good rest of your day here. Chag Sameach to you and your family. And we'll see you soon. All right.
And I want to give you and your family a blessing that you guys should continue to have success and continue to have more babies, and your father's legacy and your mother's legacy, lasts forever, and it inspires a generation to critically think who we are, what we are, and what we're supposed to do.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
All the best.
All right. Thank you, Rob. And for those who have been tuning in, thank you for being here. So I just want to wrap up with just a couple of more quick announcements. So that was Rav Mordechai. And like I said, you can check out his book. It's on Amazon. It's available there. We appreciate him for being here with us. The couple things I want to say here, just in closing, is one, to again visit our website, become a legacy builder. We'll be traveling quite a bit. So we gave a couple of dates. January, we'll be in LA on January 12th, but kind of like each month after that, we'll be in different places. So we're working on some stuff. In February, we'll be in Harlem for some crossover stuff that we're going to be doing. And March, April, May, June, we're going to be in different places, different parts, continuing to speak this message, partnering with other organizations like iAbolish, like the Shiraka group, like in a lot of our other partners as well. It's going to be incredible. And again, we thank Rav Mordechai for sharing with us. You all, it is a very tumultuous time right now in Israel, and we try to fight our fight on this front here in the United States, because again, what we've been seeing, and I cannot stress this enough, is and Rob touched on it as well, is an application, the practical application of this, whether you want to call it far left, progressive, liberation theology, BLM ideology, right? This is something that is applied. And so for those of us who think that we can hold on to that ideology and just try to make adjustments here and there, we are fighting a losing battle, because we're going to continue to see this kind of sentiment. And as we've been seeing, the masks have been coming off. one by one, right? BLM Chicago posted the graphic of the paragliders saying we stand with Palestine. We've been seeing these college professors saying that they thought what happened on October 7th was great. And then you continue to see this tone deaf ceasefire, even though, as we saw just last week, there was a ceasefire, and 15 minutes into the ceasefire, Hamas started firing rockets again. And the even more the evil part about that as well was that the vast majority of the mainstream media that reported on it couldn't even bring themselves to say that Hamas violated the ceasefire. They said that the IDF says Hamas violated ceasefire. According to Israeli officials, Hamas violated ceasefire. They couldn't even say that what actually happened. And that's the danger, and that's what we're continuing to combat on this end is, like I said, we have to push back on the whole entire ideology. It's not possible. It is not possible. It is not possible to stand up and speak for truth while embracing other lies. If you don't like what BLM has been saying about Israel, guess what? A lot of people don't like what they've been saying in general. A lot of what they say is bad. A lot of what they say are lies. A lot of what they attack are things that are actually good for society. It's not just Jews in Israel. And so let's divorce ourselves from that and completely, right? And listen to those voices that are telling you that, well, they're a problem for you here, they're a problem for us here. And that has to be across the board. These universities, it's not just these few professors. It's not just these couple of presidents. It's not just a student here or there. It's not just a student for justice in Palestine over here or Jewish Voice for Peace over there. This is a system that has been funneling, and you heard what Rob said. In the 60s they were doing this stuff to students, right? This is foundational at this point. It's a legacy at this point. And we also have to recognize that simply pulling donations for those who give aren't really going to do much at all. You know how many millions and billions of dollars these Ivy League schools get from Qatar, right? Do you know how many millions and billions of dollars these schools get from other countries and other people who agree with their agenda? So yeah, let's say you were given $10 million. That's fantastic. What's $10 million to a school that gets, $50 billion a year? It's pocket change. So we have to understand the behemoth that this has become. And we have to take larger steps to remove ourselves, not just our money, but to your friends, to your family, to people who still have a brain, to those families, to those parents who know that their university is poisoning their child, but they don't. But for whatever reason, for whatever their reasons are, they don't want to take their child out. You have to be the ones to tell them, look, you need to make this decision. You need to inconvenience yourself, however it does, and take your kid out of this school. You need to give up. If it's a status thing you like, you just want to say your kid graduated from Harvard. Okay, you got to let that go. Harvard's not what it used to be. And now we don't need to just divest our money, but divesting our children, right? Like let's starve them of the student body, because that's what's really going on right now. That takes an individual choices on our part, individual decisions. All right, you all. Unless there's any other questions, I've been seeing comments flooding in, but mostly have been comments. I did answer one of the questions. If there's anything else, if there's not, I know we're about 5 minutes under. Usually we go a little bit over, but I appreciate everyone for coming in. Again, become a legacy builder with Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. Go to ibsi.org, click the donate button, and give a monthly something. Determine what you're able to do. I said at least 18 a month. If you can give much more, then give much more. But please, this continues to enable us to do the work that we do of Black and Jewish, Africa, Israel, solidarity. We have lots of important things coming up in 2024, and we really want to be able to do it at the highest level of excellence. And we also want to see you there. Don't forget to give us a follow. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or X, YouTube, LinkedIn, and to get more content from us. We have some videos coming out soon and some more content for you in the new year. It's going to be fantastic. So you guys, once again, thank you so much. Again, our theme song was by Randy Sandoli, The First 7 Miles. We'll hear that in just a moment. And we will see you in the coming year. I'm really excited, y'all. Chag Sameach. Have a good rest of your night and have a good Hanukkah.